Welcome, listeners, to yet another episode of 100% Sale of Journalism Ethics Here, a weekly news review podcast with me, Kaushal Bhatia.
And Shailesh.
For all the first time listeners of this podcast, here's how it'll go. Sailesh and myself have selected a few news stories that broke out or developed in the last week from certain beats and give our 2 cents on the same. Each one of us will talk about a story that we have researched. In the first minute, we have to narrate the story in as much detail as possible, and the following few minutes will be open for group discussion. And yes, it's going to be as boring as it sounds because we've been told by our paid listeners. I think we should stop paying them now.
Yes.
And on that note, I think we'll move on to the first beat, that is national news story, and I'll be taking that. This story is from Times of India. The byline is credited to Anuja Jaiswal. Here's the headline: Mughal Museum to now hold Braj artifacts. The museum in Agra, originally planned to showcase the city's Mughal culture, now renamed after Maratha warrior King Shivaji, will also undergo a conceptual change. Additional Chief Secretary UP Avanish Avasthi told TOI on Tuesday the museum will be dedicated to what is Indian, the Braj culture, tradition, and heritage. This comes a day after the Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath said the original name Mughal Museum was a display of servility because Mughals can't be our heroes. So the CM said the museum would instead be named after 17th century Maratha ruler Chhatrapati Shivaji, who had engaged for 27 years in wars against the Mughals. Work on the museum, coming up near the eastern gate of the Taj Mahal, had started in 2016 with a 2017 completion target. The idea was to introduce tourists to the Grand Mughal era of the city. In a creatively crafted space, Mughal history and architecture would be on display. Historians and scholars were to be brought on the committee to ensure accuracy. Alok Ranjan, former chief secretary who was part of the project when its foundation was laid by then Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav, told TOI. The decision to change what the museum will showcase has surprised historians. Mughals were in Hindustan 150 years before Taj was built. All monuments in
Hmm.
Agra were built by them. The history of the
Correct.
city is the history of Mughals. Historian and professor
Yes.
emeritus at Aligarh Muslim University, Irfan Habib told TOI. I don't have an opinion on what the museum should be called, but this is wrong. Just taking that particular note from his quote, I would say that this is kind
Correct.
of becoming a trend with the current government, where they are pushing a narrative which suits their ideology, and I think that is dangerous because, like it's mentioned further in the article, that Braj is a region
Hmm.
devoted to the cult of Krishna and Chaitanya. It has no link with Shivaji. It is
Okay.
general consensus that the
Yeah.
museum's near monuments reflect the culture of the latter. They could build another
Correct.
museum away from Mughal monuments for Braj culture. This particular trend, which is happening right now of changing narratives, which is making everything
Hmm.
political, like weaponizing
Hmm.
history, weaponizing religion, and it's just, I feel it's a very wrong thing where it's going to affect a lot of people who want to genuinely learn about what the reality was of this, the history of this place. And it's similar, I feel it's the similar concept with how you should separate church and state, how you should separate religion and the government, how they shouldn't be the same thing. I think that is affecting
Hmm.
us right now
Hmm.
in India way more than it was in the initial stages of this government taking power. What do you have to say, Sailesh?
So the topic of separating church and state is a broader topic, and given the story, I don't think so. We have the time for it for a discussion on it. But to give you a basic opinion of mine on the issue is that the museum is named after Shivaji, and my question is, how much resonance does the Maratha king have in UP? And besides that, they are also, like you said, they are displaying the culture that has nothing to do with the intention with which the museum was started. So I don't have a opposition on having a museum on Braj culture. Like the other person quoted in the article said,
Hmm.
they could have it a separate thing. But then to simply, I think it is just pandering to a certain section of the population, saying, okay, we are doing this for the certain community in the country. And see, it's just enforcing it. It looks very fake. It doesn't feel right, you know. And secondly, whenever it I really don't understand, and this is a genuine concern I have usually when people talk about the Mughals, that you know, Mughals came from outside and ruled us and this and that. My question is, they adopted India as their own country, and I'm not saying everything they did was correct or everything they did was wrong. I'm just saying they adopted the country, they brought their culture, and that's what India's history has been. People coming in and adding their culture to our culture, and that makes is what makes our culture so diverse and so rich. So to say that okay, Mughals are not the reason, I'm saying this is, I'm very upset with the way Yogi Adityanath approached this topic, saying that you know, Mughals are not, having their name on something is not very good for us.
Hmm.
Yeah, to an extent, in certain cases you have to make certain corrections that have, like, certain historical wrongs have to be corrected, but then you go on wiping out everything, and some good, and a lot of the good that they've done goes away with it. No,
Should
I'm
I?
just saying it's just destruction of the culture that we have. A part of it goes, and a lot of it, a lot of the other things also get affected.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's about it.
So my let me play the devil's advocate here, and like you
uh,
said, obviously the topic of state, separating church and state is a much broader one. But let
hmm,
me bring this, like in the past, it's obviously known that the winners have written history, right? They have destroyed
hmm,
whatever traces of the past of what they, acquired or they basically won,
hmm,
and then they've established their own narrative, they've established their own stories, and that has then lived
hmm,
on. So in
hmm,
this day and age, after evolving so much as a society, as a global society, as people where we have scholars all over the world, and there is a whole idea of diplomatic and dialogue, would
hmm.
you say that this is a wrong thing, or would you say that this is just in tune with what has been happening over the years, over the past many centuries and centuries, with kingdoms all over the world?
No, it's not. It's not about right or wrong, because in this case, what happens is, if something has happened in history, you have to accept it and live with it. You can't correct it. That's the whole point of studying history. That whatever happens in history, you can't go back or you can't correct it today. It's happened. That's the reality. But what you can make sure is you understand what the implications of that particular incident has been, and try not to repeat it. So if we start changing names, and if we start doing things in a certain way that we feel is correct right now, maybe 50 years from now that's going to be looked down upon, and maybe those people are going to go back to status quo the way it was. So my
Hmm.
point is, the current regime is like the flavor of the season. It doesn't last long.
That's
Nobody
correct.
can last forever. What these people are thinking, the changes they will make, they think is going to survive even after them, is going to create a legacy, but that's not the truth. 50
Hmm.
years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you never know which regime is going to come and what changes they will bring. So what you need to create is a social cohesion among people, so that you leave a good legacy at the end of it, not a legacy which divides, polarizes people.
On that note, shall we move on to the next beat?
Yes.
Okay, so the next beat is national politics, and this one will be taken by you. Anytime you're ready, Sailesh.
So the story I chose for this particular beat is written by Sukhbir Sivach for the Indian Express. The title goes, Another MLA rebels against Dushyant Chautala, wants change in JGP leadership. For those who don't know what JGP is, it's actually a party in Haryana that's in coalition with the BJP right now. The full form is Jananayak Janta Party. It's a fairly young party because it was recently formed a few years ago by Dushyant Chautala, who comes from a political dynasty in Haryana, who have been in power previously, and are still considered heavyweights there. So, MLA, whose name is Devender Babli, is demanding a change in party leadership, claiming there was dissatisfaction among most of the party's 10 MLAs. So the give you the big breakdown, Haryana Assembly has 90 uh, MLA members in total.
Hmm.
40 40 of them are from the BJP, 30 are from Congress. So then you have six independent MLAs and rather seven, six of whom are supporting the BJP, and then you have Dushyant Chautala's party who has the third highest number of seats. That's 10.
Okay.
So right now Dushyant Chautala's party is crucial to BJP to stay in power. Not crucial in the sense in terms of the numbers game, because the BJP already has 40 of its and six other MLAs supporting it, which is uh, enough to keep it in power. To get the stability in the government, they need Dushyant Chautala's party. Now,
Hmm.
what the particular MLA, Mr. Devender Babli, is alleging is that Dushyant Chautala's MLAs, the 10 of whom have been elected, seven of them have their own political base. They don't need the party to get elected. They would have been elected on any ticket, either way. So their question is, the reason we came together is so that uh, he is our leader. He would lead us to a better future. And what this fellow is alleging is what has happened now after the forming of the government. The portfolios have not been allocated properly. That's what he's alleging, Mr. Bubbly, that
Hmm.
portfolios have not been distributed amongst his MLA in a proper way. And the quota that the JJP had from the BJP in having the number of cabinet ministers and all, one of them, one of the uh, seats has not been filled. That is also kept empty right now. So he's saying the portfolios have to be distributed more diversely. And there was a earlier MLA who had also his name is Ram Kumar Gautam, who has also kind of rebelled against Dushyant Chautala.
Hmm.
So the it goes to show the party politics, first of all, in the JJP and its equation with the BJP, and secondly, given the whole scenario with the ordinances, the three farm ordinances that the government is introducing and wants to pass, and the farmers' protest that has also evolved around it. At the same time, Dushyant Chautala's party's base is linked to rural areas where the farmers are its voters. So
Hmm.
now, given the fact that Harsimran Kaur Badal of the Akali Dal has resigned as the union minister
Yes.
over the ordinances,
Harsimran. Yeah. Harsimrat. Yeah.
Kaur Badal. So given that she's resigned over the ordinances, now Congress tweeted recently saying that now at least you resign as well, because Dushyant Singh Chautala is currently the deputy chief minister. So there's a lot of things happening right now in Haryana in terms of the politics, and not only Haryana, even Punjab for that matter, wherever the farmers have a majority or a strong presence, or the farming, the states which have a lot of farming, they are seeing
Which is basically
certain.
primary agricultural based.
Yeah, so they are facing a lot of they are facing a lot of the ruling governments, or the BJP ruled states are facing a bit of resistance over this whole three ordinances. Now, to
I think,
I
if I'm not wrong, even in Bihar, obviously for different reasons, but Chirag Paswan from the LJP is kind of having a tiff with another alliance partner, which is JDU, but that's a different story. I'll tell you, I'll ask you one question on this particular thing. So the farmers bill that has been introduced, and
three
that
farm
is
three farmers ordinances.
three farmers ordinances which have been introduced recently in
Huh.
the and passed from the Lok Sabha, that has created a lot of uproar. The SAD, that is the Shiromani Akali Dal, is standing against their long time ally BJP.
Hmm.
And although I would say it's a little different with JJP, because isn't JJP already like a party which is formed from another party that used to exist? I'm not very sure with the history of this JJP.
Uh, Not formed as in the sense Dushan comes from a family. The Chautalas, they have a party called INLD.
Hmm.
Now, INLD, he went separate and he formed his own party. It didn't break from that party,
Hmm.
and he performed relatively well because INLD won only one seat in the previous assembly elections compared to the previous one where it had won much more seats. So this time around, it was a surprise of sorts to see him perform so well. And like the MLA alleges, if it is true, then seven of those people who have their own base to get elected. The party is like a confederacy rather than
Hmm.
a party where one leader, and there is a chain of command where the leader is leading the party, and he's like how Arvind Kejriwal is in Aam Aadmi
AAP
Party.
Delhi. Yeah.
He's the face. People fight elections on his name and face. So
Hmm.
here it doesn't now when he's made the comments and all it. See, the thing is, we don't follow local Haryana politics so
Correct.
closely if you're not from that state. But then it gives a good insight into the internal politics of the party, at the same time what is happening on the local level and what the dynamic is. So it
That's
sounds
true.
like those seven people have come together with Dushyant Chautala and given him the mantle, and some two of them are dissatisfied, who have openly shown it. So let's see what happens in the future.
Right. And I'll just one last thing I want to say about this and take
Mm,
your opinion on it is to draw parallels between Congress and BJP having coalitions and forming governments.
mm,
If you see UPA 1 and then UPA 2 was basically at UPA 2 was a miserable state. And a lot of people have talked about it how the IAC could easily just mow them down with the corruption charges and the graft charges, and no one was standing, next to like with their counterparts or with the coalition partners. And comparatively, if you see it doesn't seem like BJP is too very worried about them having dissatisfied coalition partners because their popularity among the masses is not decreasing, so to say.
See, that's debatable. Right now, the way COVID has been handled, the way the economy has been run, and all those things, I don't know to what extent their popularity is. The popularity is with Narendra Modi. He has the numbers, and the allies have no leverage over BJP. So it's more like a BJP centric agenda than the coalition agenda. Whereas
Hmm.
when UPA 2 was being run, there were parties who were sustaining the government. The Congress didn't have a majority on its own, or neither were they close to it. So the problem is that they had won a substantial number of seats compared to the previous elections, but then the whole point is they didn't have their own numbers to count on. So they were being, now what happens, the interest of other people started playing a important major role in that, and then
Hmm.
that kind of gave a
To the
perception that
tracks and it brought it to its knees then.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I
Let's move
think
on.
on that note, shall we move on to the next beat?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So the next beat is business,
Yeah,
and I'll be talking about that.
yeah.
This particular story, it's a opinion of sorts, but I would still call it kind of like a story because it's giving a lot of information about this particular deal that's taken place.
Okay,
The story is from
okay,
analyticsindiamag.com.
okay,
It's written by Ram Sagar, who has a master's degree in robotics, and he writes. That's his
okay.
profile. That's what he's written.
Uh-huh.
Okay, here's the headline: Why Nvidia acquired ARM.
Hmm.
Nvidia today announced, this is a story from 15th of September. Yeah, 15th
Hmm.
September. Nvidia today announced that it would acquire ARM Limited from SBG, that is SoftBank Vision Fund and the
Yeah.
SoftBank Vision Fund in a transaction valued at $40 billion.
Hmm.
According to the terms of the transaction, Nvidia will pay SoftBank $21.5 billion in common stock and $12 billion in cash. This includes $2 billion payable at signing. AI is the
Hmm.
most powerful technology force of our time and has launched a new wave of computing, said Jensen Huang, founder and CEO of Nvidia. Talking about the future of Nvidia with ARM, Huang explained that trillions of computers running AI would create a new Internet of Things that would be larger than today's Internet of People. Our
Correct.
combination will create a company fabulously positioned for the age of AI. With
Hmm.
ARM on its side, Nvidia is well positioned to steer innovation for the next generation of artificial intelligence and expand into large high growth markets.
Correct.
Now, just to get your so he's basically spoken much more about this in detail and how it affects it, how it affects the tech market and the computer and the smartphone market and the artificial intelligence market henceforth after Nvidia acquiring ARM. And to give you a little bit of an idea of what ARM is, ARM is the poster child of UK's innovation and has been involved with building chips that accelerated the smartphone innovation. Today, more than 95% of smartphones in the world house ARM's architecture. Now,
Hmm.
this has also been in stories coming from China. They've basically called it a very disturbing deal because I think ARM kind of has a monopoly in terms of the kind of technology they have with these chips, and Nvidia acquiring them will kind of just move over the opposition, and China might be someone who's on the bad side of a lot of Western countries, so they might just avoid giving them the technology or sharing this kind of the patents that ARM has, which is
Okay.
going to create a big problem for China, who create like innumerable things like smartphones and all, which are budget, and they earn a lot of money with this kind of tech because they have that kind of infrastructure to make and build and manufacture these things at a much cheaper rate because they are the
Hmm.
factory of the world, so to speak. And what do you think about this deal, like personally? Do you have you thought about it? Have you read about this article?
No, I have read about the news, as
Okay.
in a very basic thing. I just know that ARM Holdings has been acquired, and whatever you read, the company statement, that's what I've read, and my knowledge about this particular thing is very limited. So I really can't comment. But as far as China is concerned about the whole semiconductor thing, see,
Hmm.
that's the thing that's holding them back. China has been trying to there's one place where China is lagged, that is the semiconductor business.
Hmm.
So what happens in China's case is it may manufacture the equipment, but at the end of the day, it relies on those semiconductors that have come from outside.
Hmm.
So that's the tussle that's there. That's the thing that US has been trying to keep China away from. So it's about uh, see, China can buy as many semiconductors as it wants.
Correct.
There's no dearth of it. They it'll be cheaper, expensive, whatever it is, they'll buy. There's access to it. But what happens is they don't have the access to the technology, like you said,
Correct.
and that's what they've been trying to overcome over these years. So, like you remember, now I may digress from the whole topic a bit. When
Hmm.
North Korea was consistently testing missiles,
Yes.
Iran was consistently testing missiles. See, the argument what they gave was, they are going to, like, Iran is going to get nuclear weapons, North Korea is getting also, going to get a missile that's going to threaten US even more. The
Hmm.
argument over there was over nuclear weapons and capability, but the actual reason why America didn't want Iran and North Korea, I'm very sorry for North Korea to test more missiles is because they didn't want them to get those capabilities of developing those kind of missiles. So the whole
Correct.
idea of doing the nuclear deal with the Iranians and having sanctions on North Korea is to stop them from acquiring that capability. Same thing goes with when it comes to China and semiconductors. The
Hmm.
US is trying to stop them, and
They
yeah,
probably will
so
also. I feel. I kind of feel that that could be the next, because recently I think in the print Shekhar Gupta was talking about fifth generation warfare, which
yeah,
is going to be all information and media and whatnot and all of that.
yeah,
So I feel that how can you fight a 5G fifth generation warfare is with technology, with these smartphones, with these computers and all of that, right? Now, if they are going to be deprived of this technology, or if just US says that no, we are going to deal with you because we don't agree with your ideology or your your communist system and whatnot, which they are very
hello,
capable of doing with Trump there at the
yeah.
helm. I feel this is a
Oh,
very big, like it's not just in business terms, in terms of economically, in terms of a lot of things. It's going to have a big impact. And obviously, I'm
Yeah.
not well enough great strategist to understand in what way, but I just know that
Mm.
this is big news.
Yeah, so the problem is I don't know a lot about. I mean, I don't follow in business in depth. So
Hmm.
I expect my understanding of this subject is very limited. It's very basic. So
Yeah.
I'm really sorry I can't give
No,
you much
no,
on
no
that.
worries. But I think on that note, I will also tell the listeners that
Yeah,
hopefully in the next week, maybe the next particular episode, we have a
yeah,
certain Ram in our lives,
yeah.
who has tested me like Sita. If you know the epic well, there was a point at which Sita was had to take a test, had to go to the Agni Pariksha,
Hmm.
and this particular Ram who might join us, who is better at these particular beats, and will
Business.
take charge of them. He might join us next episode or maybe in October, but he's definitely coming. So I
Yeah.
think with this particular story and on that beat and on that note of this beat, I will keep you all in suspense. Those who know us know who Ram is, and those who don't will have a great time finding out who he is in the following podcasts.
Hmm.
Okay, on that note, I will move on to the next beat, which is international, and that is taken up by you, Sailesh, anytime you're ready.
Okay. So the particular story I chose for this beat this week is it fairly made it may have been known. I know it's not off the radar as such, but it's still, you know, I thought it's an interesting story that didn't get a lot of attention. So the
Okay.
story is Barbados to remove Queen Elizabeth II of UK as head of state.
Hmm.
So Barbados is a Caribbean country that has Queen Elizabeth as its head of state since it got its independence in 1966, and there are about 15 around 15 countries that still have Queen Elizabeth as the head of state, where there is a governor general, and so the announcement was made uh, by the government of Barbados saying this the time has come to fully leave our colonial past behind,
Hmm.
and uh,
Aren't
you
they
know
aren't they called? I'm sorry. Aren't they called protectorates?
uh, no
Okay, my
no
bad.
they
Continue.
yeah they have a different status.
Okay.
So uh, what do you think of the development?
I
It's time
feel,
for me
yeah,
to.
sorry. I feel that's a great change because even one of the biggest continents, I think, a Western continent, so to speak, but it's in the eastern side. Australia is also has a head of state as Queen Elizabeth II, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, Australia and Canada both.
Yeah. So both of these countries, I feel it's good. That they take charge and they change it for whatever reason, for their own national pride, or to take a different narrative. It kind of adds a boost to their own people, to their own
Hmm.
politics. I think it's about time. I think it's very weird that it's taken them a pandemic. Like,
No, the idea has been floated. There was a constitutional review commission
hmm,
that recommended that they become a republic now
hmm,
from their current status, and what they, it's been in talks for a while. So now they finally, uh, gone off. Like the prime minister has said, this is the ultimate. Prime Minister Mia Mottley has said,
hmm.
this is the ultimate statement of confidence in who we are and what we are capable of
Yeah.
achieving. And she said, Barbadians wanted a Barbadian head of state.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, I think that's very fair. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? The colonies are no longer colonies, they are independent states, and they should be like that. And even ceremonially, or even in their constitution, I think it doesn't make sense of having like Queen Elizabeth II as a head of state, or if any other colonial states are having such head of states of whichever colonies existed. I
Mm.
think it's time we move on to a modern way, whatever they want to be, whatever kind of state they want to be, whether they want to be a
Hmm.
communist or a democratic state or whatever works for them and works for the people. They get their own identity because
Correct.
obviously, in no way, in no way do they resemble Britain or England, right? Other than the fact that they were once like,
Ruled by them.
yeah. So I feel great, man. I mean, nothing more than that. I'm very happy that if they take that
Hmm.
decision, and I hope it works in favor of the youth there. It works in favor of the people. They feel happier. They feel their own type of identity. They market it so we know more about it. Cause there's a
You
lot.
sound very, you sound very diplomat. No, I'm sorry to cut you off like this,
Huh.
but your language sounds as if, I've asked some businessman to talk
Yeah,
about
man. I
his
don't. I.
rival, or some diplomat to talk about the country they are political rivals to. Like, for example, I've asked an American diplomat to talk about China, and he's in an awkward position where, he can't make an outrageous comment. Now they can because of the election. But you sound like, oh, I'm very happy and I hope it works.
See, I'm applying for being a diplomat from India. So let's see if they
Okay.
listen to this podcast. They shouldn't be like, "Arey, this boy is not understanding." He's just saying
He's
like,
just mouthing off to people.
yeah. I mean, I don't want to do that. I want to keep my options open of having various
Career
jobs. Yeah,
choices.
exactly. I mean, you obviously have the intellect and the qualification to be all that, but I have what I have is my words, is my articulation, and my
Oration.
charisma.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
just to, I think I'll put an
Closing.
interesting argument,
Yeah.
a closing argument, not by me, by a BBC diplomatic correspondent, James
Oh,
Landale. He
diplomatic.
says, diplomatic
Sorry,
correspondent.
continue.
So, he said he wrote an analysis piece on the particular event that took place, and he said it is actually quite unusual for a country to remove the queen as its head of state.
Hmm.
The last one to do was Mauritius in 1992.
Hmm.
Other Caribbean countries like Dominica, Gu- Guyana, Trinidad
Hmm.
and Tobago became republics in the 70s, when probably they got the soon after the independence or at their time of the independence. And
Yeah.
the 15 countries that are currently part of the who have queen as the head of state, he argues that they seem to value the relationship it provides with her and the United Kingdom. So I think, let's see how the
That
UK.
actually once I have got another now because I didn't have anything to say at that point, but once you gave me that argument, now I have something to say. One is,
Hmm.
yeah, that makes sense because see, this is doing arts. Now, there's one thing about arts. When you do any kind of arts, there is a
Hmm.
concept of winging it. You know,
Hmm.
like you just repeat the question and you'll get some marks. But no, that's actually a very good point. Is I think they might be using it politically.
Huh.
The political leaders there might be using this particular issue politically. And another thing is, will they have the same benefits as Commonwealths do after this? Will
No,
they
they
share the
they will
same kind of relationship with UK?
see, they will be part of the Commonwealth. Like
Correct.
India is a Commonwealth country.
Yeah,
They
but I'm
have
I'm
the whole
speaking I'm saying
Commonwealth Games.
in the sense like removing, because India never considered the Queen Elizabeth after independence. We didn't consider her as the head of state, right? We said we will make our own constitution and republic, and we'll use whatever this is and find out. But I think
Hmm.
if they've done that, it's kind of also a little bitter, na, for UK. Like they're like as if we are interfering at all, because I don't
Yeah.
think that there is any interference from the royals or the government of UK. I mean, if they want
No,
to interfere, they don't need the particular fact that the head of state is the Queen Elizabeth II. They can interfere
yeah,
like that only because they have a bigger power and they are economically well off and other things.
yeah, and the Royal Palace has commented that the matter is for the government and people of Barbados.
Yeah.
It's their own concern. They'll figure it out. So they said it's not out of the blue anything. Like I mentioned earlier, it's been talked about for a while. So they were like, it's okay,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
King will on to the next.
Right. So on that note, we'll move on to the next beat, which is sports. Is it or
Hmm.
is it sports? It's sports.
Sports,
Yes.
sports. Yes.
You know, one thing about sports is that I
Hmm.
have lost. Here it is. Okay, I found the article. Sorry. So this one is from the Hindu. They've got it from the news agency Associated Press. There's no
Okay.
byline. The byline is given to Associated Press. Here is
Okay.
the headline: Barcelona president Josep Bartomeu to face
Hmm.
vote of no confidence.
Okay.
Barcelona president Josep Bartomeu faces a vote of no confidence after club members gathered enough signatures to force a referendum on his future. The vote will be held after the club verifies all the signatures. Bartomeu would have to step down if two-thirds of the votes are against him, and new elections would have to be scheduled. The opposition members had announced their intention to remove Bartomeu from presidency after Lionel Messi told the club last month he wanted to leave amid one of its worst crises. Messi
Okay.
criticized Barcelona club directors last season and said he did not like the direction the club was headed. He later personally
Okay.
accused Bartomeu of not keeping his promise to let him leave for free at the end of the season. Pressure on Bartomeu
Hmm.
increased after the team's embarrassing 8-2 loss to Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals of Champions League, one of the worst in the club's history. The defeat
Hmm.
prompted Bartomeu to announce big changes at the
Hmm.
club and call for new presidential elections for next March. Now, I don't know if you've been
Hmm.
following this, but there was, I think, a month back, maybe I'm not getting the timeline correct, but a month back or maybe a little earlier than that, Lionel Messi was going to, there was the news that he was going to leave Barcelona and go into a different team, and everyone was trying to get him, everyone approached him and all, and he had a
No,
talk with them.
I think it was confirmed, right, that he wanted to leave. He put in his
Yeah, yeah.
papers. I think that I think there was a technicality that about some he could have left in June, and because he resigned in August, he something of that
Yeah.
sort. Could you clear it up for us?
Well, there's nothing is given here, but I do know that there was a lot of news because I support the team Chelsea from the English Premier League,
Hmm.
and I had read reports about Frank Lampard approaching him and all, and he was supposed to go free without anyone paying Barcelona for a transfer fee because he would be
Hmm.
unaffordable. He's one of the best players. He's got like innumerable number of Ballon d'Ors, which is like the best player award that
Hmm.
FIFA gives to whoever's
Yeah.
performed the best in that year. And I think
Correct.
I don't know the technicality as such, but I think the president of Barcelona then went back on his word and, uh, said that you would have to pay for Messi, and which obviously no one can afford or something of that sorts. And Messi was not happy with
Okay.
it, so he voiced his criticism. And now he's having a no confidence vote against him.
Okay.
I will find the reports that explain the technicalities and put in the description below. You all can check it out. But now talking about this particular thing,
Hmm.
I think this is great. I'll tell you why this is great. Because a player of the skill
No
that,
confidence vote against him.
sorry.
The no confidence vote against
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bartholomew.
The no confidence vote against the current Barcelona president. I feel it's a great
Hmm.
thing because this is all prompted after a player of the skill of Messi has expressed his displeasure. And I think that is very democratic in a sense. I mean, it's not democratic, but it is kind of democratic because the players who are giving a lot to this team and the team is earning much, much, much more because of these players who are doing great and who are winning all these
Hmm.
trophies and whatnot. But even in the NBA, like we see, I'm drawing parallels, and it might look like a big jump, but just bear with me. The NBA, many players had decided not to play, even in the bio bubble and all, because they were trying to support the Black Lives Matter. But at the same times, they
Hmm.
are owned by these particular teams, even though they get like tons and millions, hundreds and millions of dollars in terms of whatever their deal is in the contract that they've got. but they have
Okay.
to stay within a certain they have to follow a certain guideline that these corporates give them, and the freedom is not there. Like, they don't have that much freedom. So I feel, and when the full NBA, when all the players of NBA decided that, you know what, we're gonna do, we are all not going to play, and all these billionaires and millionaires who own these clubs, they all panicked. They said, "Oh, what do you want? You know, we'll do anything. We'll kind of help out and work towards Black Lives Matter. We'll help empower the black people who are being discriminated against and whatnot." So a lot of power. These players have a lot of power, and this is another sign of the players having power, because ultimately the player is giving, a sports person has a very short life, is a very short career span, like compared to other jobs, right, where you are in a on a desk or
Hmm.
you're whatever. So, and it's also a very risky thing, because if you get
Hmm.
injured at a very early stage in your life, then your career is over. Then you would not get paid as much as you would if you were playing. Then you would be a commentator, or you would be a pundit, or you would be a coach, or you would be assistant coach, but not, you wouldn't be in your prime, and a lot of things can happen. These risks exist. So I feel if their voices are being heard
Hmm.
and genuine changes are being taken place because of that, it's great. And
Okay.
similarly, like India's chess team winning the Olympiad, the online Olympiad, and them at that time were petitioning for chess players to also be given the Arjuna Award. I think
Hmm.
these
Correct.
things matter, right? Performing great and then asking for proper rights. I mean, obviously they deserve it, right? So I think this is a
Hmm.
great thing. That is my view on this. Sailesh, what do you feel?
No, my knowledge is very limited, to be honest. So like I said, I follow very few beats. So yeah.
Okay, Ramesh, this time you should be disappointed because I gave him enough of a argument to, form an opinion off of that, even if it's not like so. So,
No,
Ramesh, you're
I
going to be,
think
huh?
the I think it was more of a technicality thing where he could have left in June without having to, without the whole issue of the money coming in. But then, because he resigned last month, if I'm not wrong, he couldn't be availing that benefit of that particular clause in his contract.
Hmm.
So then, obviously, what I'm talking about is not related to the story of the whole no confidence vote. So I
Okay.
think, see, at the end of the day, any reform that takes place in any particular organization is always a good thing because, and I mean a true reform in its sense,
Yeah.
not the whole thing where you take away some people's rights and call it a reform. So
Yeah.
the reform that, if it leads to more democratic uh, operations of the particular club, it would be good, I think.
See, I think you know what, I we can draw parallels to say another industry. Let me give an example.
Hmm.
Let's say an editor of a newspaper is not doing a very good job, okay, and
Hmm.
we are the employees of that particular newspaper, any news team or whatever,
Hmm.
and a lot of people are unhappy. You voice your opinions to the management, and the management is like, okay, if all of y'all are saying that, we will, get a person who you respect and who does the job much better, because this person has done a lot of blunders, and he probably
Hmm.
might not be functioning in the way that he should as a editor of the news whatever
Correct.
organization. So I
Correct.
feel in that way, if he's done something which has upset a lot of people and then he's actually going out because of it, I feel that's good.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Uh,
Yeah.
if the organization is being affected because of one person who's heading it, then definitely that
Yeah.
person needs to rather be held responsible for it.
So I think good news. We'll share the two stories. We'll try to find the technical part, that the June transfer thing, the technicality of which Sailesh was talking about.
Hmm.
And on that note, I feel we will move on to the next beat, which is entertainment, and that is taken up by you, Sailesh. Anytime you're
Hmm.
ready.
Yeah. So the story is not entertainment as such, but
Hmm.
I don't know. It may be categorized as entertainment.
Okay.
The listeners can judge. So the story is of Sushil Kumar, who in 2011 became the first contestant to win rupees 5 crores on Kaun Banega Karodpati.
Hmm.
And he the reason I'm mentioning it is because he recently wrote a Facebook post and where he described what happened in his life after KBC. And to be honest, anybody, like for example, if I give you an option,
Hmm.
Kaushal, I'm going to give you 5 crores. What would you assume? That you would assume good things would happen to you, right?
Yes. Yes.
Post winning the 5 crores.
I
So
would. Yeah.
he goes on to describe the exact opposite of it. He says, after winning 5 crores, my life went topsy turvy.
Oh my
And
God.
he describes his journey where, it actually was a journey for him after winning KBC and, coming back home. And, he was like, my life turned around 360 degrees. And, in the 360-degree turn that he took, he
Hmm.
experienced a lot of things and he figured out a lot of things about himself and about life and all. So he explains that 2015-16 was the toughest year for me. He's like, he moved out of his home from Bihar. He came to Mumbai for around 6 months. He was living alone. He worked
Hmm.
at a particular production company, writing scripts for serials. And he's like, uh, he goes on to explain that soon after I won KBC, I was being called here and there. My studies were affected. He was aspiring to be an IS officer at that time,
Hmm.
and he was like investing money in various businesses, and they didn't work out so well. And he lost a lot of money. He said he went to Mumbai, like I mentioned. For 6 months he was there. That's when he figured out that he was running away from his problems at home in Bihar. One of the problems that I don't want to get into the details because I want
Hmm.
people to go and actually read it, read the article, read the Facebook post.
Yeah.
So,
No, I had. Sorry. Continue.
so one of the problems he says is that after he won, got into philanthropy, and he was like, I used to give out around 50,000 a month, just like that, if someone would ask. So he's like, there was a particular group of people who knew I was easy with money, so they would come to him every month and tell him about something, and this fellow would give them money, and they kept this whole racket going for a while. So he was like, then he explains a lot of things, how he went to Delhi also for a while. He met some people from Jamia Millia and some people from JNU, and he's like, my whole world horizon widened, but at the same time I got into bad habits. So
Hmm.
anyways, what you were saying something.
I read this. I read this thing you were talking about.
Okay,
Maybe not fully, but I did.
you
And
read the Facebook post.
I read the story that came on Google News. I saw Sushil
Okay,
Kumar
okay.
winning the 5 crores, and
Yeah,
then he started attending these lectures. Also, he started giving lectures, and he
hmm,
was very charitable and whatnot. And a
correct.
lot of things are explained, and I feel this is a very expensive lesson he's learned.
I think there was a research that came out a few years back which said that lottery winners eventually end up broke, or
Oh
lottery
yeah, yeah,
winners
yeah. Oh
they're not
yeah.
good. I mean, that's the only thing I remember about that story, that they gave a few examples where people who won the lottery or people who won something like a lottery, maybe
Correct.
they got a lot of money at certain points in their life, but later on it didn't build up to anything. It was like it was as usual, or it went downhill from that high point.
That is the thing. Now,
So
when people say I want to earn, but I
hmm.
don't want to earn so much that it affects my life. You know what I mean? Because there is like I don't know. I feel like it's just very crazy. I don't know what to comment on this because I read about it and I know his story somewhat. His wife was
Hmm.
also saying that you have no sense. He was hanging out with people who were talking about things that he didn't know, and he would get intimidated, but he would still hang out with
Yeah,
them.
yeah. No,
So
but
it's
at the
just
same time, for him, it was like when he would talk to them, he didn't know what to say to them or talk to them about.
yeah.
But then he did learn a lot in that process, and he said I felt like a frog in a well, living all my life in that well.
Yeah. No,
So
but I
what?
think he's going to. This is going to. I think this particular thing that he's written is an acknowledgement. It's
Hmm,
an acknowledgement of what he knows about himself more. He's got a
correct.
clear idea of who he is. He's got a clear idea of what people around him were thinking of him, and it's I think it's worth it. I think he's still a young man.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I
I'm not
mean
sure.
that's the whole point. That the only takeaway for me from this particular story was that money is not the ultimate measure of success. First of all, and secondly, you know, I don't want to win a lottery now. I mean that kind of like even I have plans. If I get 10 crores, I would do this and that. But then at the same time, I
Uh,
think I learn a lot through my struggles, and if I don't struggle anymore, I'm not learning anything. So what kind of a life would that be? So
that's true.
yeah, I think the only takeaway for me from this particular story was that you know
So basically,
uh,
what I'm saying
huh,
is, when this view, and obviously, I'm not going to connect it very properly with this story, but I'm just going to make a statement of this, which I do to a lot of people, and they just disagree with me, saying that I have no brains. But I'll say it
hmm,
even now. Money is the root of all evil.
okay, that's a good statement. But then okay, fine.
You understand what I'm saying. The rest of the people, I've not put a lot of thought in articulating this particular statement is connecting to this, but I think you get an idea of what I'm trying to say, right? Like you might think
I
that
mean,
money
think
money
about
will
it.
make your life easier, but then money might make you get used to something which you won't be able to maintain later on. And then just to maintain that particular thing, you will have to do things that you probably wouldn't have done earlier because you wouldn't even know they existed, right?
Yeah, for example, Sushil Kumar says like his studies were affected. He was not able to. He had to go for particular programs here and there, this
Hmm.
and that, all the time. So I think it's a good lesson that don't connect money and success. Don't measure like money cannot be the measure. You can't connect them two together. A
You know what
person
I was
can
going
be
to say?
poor.
Go on.
Ha, tell.
What I was going to say was,
So I'm just saying.
sorry, continue.
I'm just saying a man can be not very wealthy at the same time be very very successful. Anyways, you tell me.
Yeah. So what I was going to say was like anyone who is on the verge of success or who's going to get into that particular line, and you know that you're going to become a big person or earn a lot of money, you should read this. But
Hmm.
then I'm realizing that if they are going to be successful, why would they listen to this podcast?
Correct. No,
Yeah.
but the point is, the, see, we are doing this podcast. We are not getting any money. We are just doing it
Wait,
because
you're not
we
getting
want to do
paid?
it.
Oh
No,
shit.
I mean, are you
No, no,
getting
no, I'm
paid?
not getting paid.
So
uh,
the whole point is that we are doing it because we want to try something new. That's I think experiences count
you
more.
know what? We might write a story like Sushil Kumar did after we lose a lot of money on this podcast. Like we thought it was a
The,
good thing. We put in everything in that, and
I think in Sushil Kumar's case, Sushil Kumar lost money. We are just gonna lose time. We don't have the money to lose.
then that's fine. We are anyways
What?
procrastinators. Yeah, like it's not a big deal.
Hmm.
See, now
So I
you'll be
think
diplomatic. You're like, I don't want to say that. I don't want
no,
to say.
no. We are procrastinators. We are how will you say underachievers or whatever you want to call us.
Uh,
We're all that actually,
yeah.
and that's the truth. The whole point is we've accepted it, and we are still being the way we are. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's move on to the next beat.
Right. So, just to give a last closing argument before we move on to the next beat is Sushil Kumar, whoever the person who had won the
Kumar,
5 crores.
Sushil Kumar.
Yeah, I don't know why you said Shinde. I mean, I said Shinde. My bad. My
You
bad.
said
I said Shinde.
Sushil
It's
Kumar
my bad.
Shinde was the former home minister
Yeah,
of
yeah,
India.
yeah, yeah. I know. I know. I should know this. I'm from Mumbai, Maharashtra, so I should know this. Anyways, what I was saying was
Hmm.
this person has written that I am going to move on to the next beat because I forgot what I was going to say. I'm so bad at.
Okay.
Anyways, so the next beat. On that note, Sailesh, I'll take your permission to move on to the next beat.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the next beat is opinion of the week, which is going to be
Yeah.
taken up by me. And there are a lot of opinions I wanted to talk about. There
Hmm.
was one written. I'll just list two of them. One was a criticism on the judiciary and a word of advice from in the Hindu by Sri Ram Panchu, Another story was a opinion piece written by Yogi Adityanath, and this
Wow.
was about
You
Modi.
don't hear that a lot.
Sorry.
You don't hear that a lot,
That's
saying
that's why
opinion
that's why I
piece
wanted
written by
to.
Yogi
That's why I
Adityanath.
wanted to read it, and I read it, and it's very well written. Like it's written, like it's proper. It's in the
Hmm.
Indian Express.
Hmm.
But the opinion of the week that I have chosen is written by a person who I have like a love-hate relationship with because I love the way she writes. But
Okay.
I always kind of get very
Shobha.
angry. Oh, there you go. There
I,
you
I,
go. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Shobha, a particular opinion? No, I don't know. But
Oh
I
yeah,
know
yeah,
who
that's
you have.
Shobha Day. That's Shobha Day. From what I was saying earlier about the opinion piece, and you had
Hmm.
guessed correctly, it is by Shobha Day,
Shobha Day.
and it's on the website of NDTV.
Hmm.
Here is the headline: Kangna's heavy heart and Bollywood response by Shobha Day.
Okay.
I will just read like the first paragraph, although it won't make sense, but I just want to read it because it will then give me a thread to the train of thought to go ahead with it. This is what
Okay.
happens during an ugly divorce. A laundry load of dirty linen is hung up for public viewing, and the owner of the laundry runs away. Think of the latest Bollywood controversy that erupted when Samajwadi MP Jaya Bachchan spoke during Zero Hour on the opening day of this session of Parliament. Let's call it a dramatic first day, first show moment, which is common currency in showbiz. Over to Bollywood versus Bollywood. And then she goes on to, narrate about what Jaya Bachchan said, what the response of the other people, the, people who don't have the hand of the established cliques or whatnot. And she calls this very brilliantly, she writes this particular thing where she's actually taking all kind of perspectives in consideration while writing this. And she's a great
Hmm.
writer. I cannot deny that. I cannot deny that Shobha Dey is
Hmm.
a great writer. She talks about the Kangna Ranaut angle, and Ranveer Shore is also. I mean, I don't think she's mentioned Ranveer Shore speaking in this, but
Okay.
a lot of things about the industry. And she said that Bollywood isn't innocent. They cannot play the martyr or the victim card here. I just read the last part. The cleanup drive is a waste of time. It's far better to be upfront and deal with Bollywood the way it is, without dousing heavy duty sanitizer on all its colorful denizens, or whitewashing and spray painting the grime. There are saints and there are sinners. They coexist in Shanti. Bollywood is not Juhu Beach where which can be cleaned up thanks to the effort of a few. Bollywood was and remains a badass monster. Till then, lie low, actor log, and keep your nostrils clean. I mean, I was like, wow. Oh man, I think there's nothing more I can say about this that won't want people like people will just go and read this by listening to that bit. But I just love it
Hmm.
the way she's written it. She's mentioned about oh god, starting with loudmouth number one on the face of it. The obvious object of her ear was BJP MP Ravi Kishan, who had spoken about the drug addiction in the film industry and
Hmm.
all. So like a lot of angles, even the Sushant Singh Rajput's tragic death, and it's a great opinion. In fact, instead of talking about this particular opinion, because I think I might just blurt the full thing out, why don't you talk about
Hmm.
Shobha Day's opinions if you've read them in the past and what you think about her?
I don't agree with a lot of the opinions she writes, and I don't like a lot of the opinion pieces she's written
Yeah.
in the past. But then there are some opinion pieces that I remember, and I've read her only one of her books. That's Sethi.
Hmm.
I think at that point of time I liked it a lot. I don't know if today if I read it I like the book as much as I did then. But to me at that time the book was very interesting. So I think she has a very good style of writing. She has a very good style of putting things in perspective. So I used to like reading certain like her opinion pieces used to regularly come on Times of India,
Hmm.
and what I would do is I would read a little bit of it, the starting part, and if I find it interesting, I would read. That would happen more often that I would not find it interesting.
Yeah.
See, the thing about opinion pieces is I don't necessarily read the only pieces that I read is the ones I agree with. That's not the case, because
Correct.
I read the pieces written by people who I don't agree with. But then, whether I find it interesting or not is a question. If there is a particular thing, like for example, SSR, if she's now, for example, this particular piece,
Hmm.
now there were two things happening. Either I would like what she's written and I would continue reading, or I wouldn't, and I would, move on to the other thing.
Yeah.
So because it's written in such an interesting way, I would definitely read this particular
Yeah,
piece.
you will.
So that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's what I think about Shobha Day. Sometimes she's uh, brilliant for me, sometimes she's not. That's the way it is.
I remember one opinion she had written. It was after the horrible Nirbhaya case that had taken place, and the people,
Hmm.
the perpetrators, were supposed to be hanged. Uh,
Hmm.
and she had written against capital punishment.
Correct.
And there was this full, I remember the letters to the editor after that, which just came
Hmm.
like, oh, you're sitting in your ivory tower, and it's easy for you to say
Hmm.
about all this, but it's the people who are the working class who don't get that kind of security that y'all have, and who don't have that kind of political power or influence that y'all have to kind of get things sorted out. And no matter what you say about her, she's very like, she sticks to her beliefs, her principles, her whatever thoughts are. No matter what, she will stick to that, and she'll write them blatantly. And I think that is something that I really admire about her as a writer, to be
Okay.
able to get so many angles and to write about it. Like, even in this, it's this one, I feel it's somewhat balanced, but at the same time I get a little bit like, oh god, how can she write that? Oh, she said that. Oh, and it's like crazy, but I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, she's good, she's really good. Anyways, so this is the opinion of the week. And
And your opinion of her
yeah,
for the week.
yeah, my opinion of her. But I think it's a compliment to her, to be honest. It's a very big compliment. Moving on to the last beat of the podcast, that is the interview of the week, that will be taken up by
Yeah.
you, Sailesh, anytime you're ready.
So the interview I chose for this particular week is of U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, and it's the interview comes in the backdrop of Taliban and the Afghan government meeting in Qatar and trying to negotiate a peace deal between them. And Khalilzad has been an instrumental person as far as U.S. policy towards Afghanistan, because after Trump won, Trump has tried to, give a image where he's saying that, I'm going to end wars that US has been stuck into for the past 2 decades or so.
Hmm.
So one of the main concerns for Trump at that point of time was Afghanistan. They wanted to end the conflict, and Zalmay Khalilzad has been his point man on this particular issue. And because of his efforts, US had signed a peace deal with Taliban on 29 February this year.
Mhm.
So this interview, the title is "Now Afghans cannot blame the United States," and what he talks about is that, after almost 2 decades that US directly intervened in the conflict with Afghanistan, uh, this is the first time that the Afghan government and the Taliban have sat together and are trying to hammer out a peace deal. And what he particularly means by that statement is that tomorrow, if the Afghans do not agree to a particular deal, or they cannot work things out, it is not our fault, because we've given them the platform, we've given them the diplomatic room to negotiate. It is now their opportunity to seek out a settlement to their conflict and eventually move on with their lives of sorts. So
Hmm.
you must have followed this news.
Yes, yes.
What do you think about the whole peace process that is currently taking place in Qatar? This is more like asking your personal opinion,
Hmm.
and I'll mention what the US envoy said about this.
Okay.
This whole thing seems like a very rushed thing, and at the same time, what do you think? Will there be a real reconciliation, or it will be a temporary thing, and break? Eventually, it will again break out into the civil war. What do you think? What do
I
you
think
have to
that
say
is,
about that?
I think not a civil war, but I think there needs to be a domestic revolution against this, right? because that is when the Taliban or the elected government will come to know what the people actually want. So, with the foreign troops being there trying to just keep things under wraps, this is ultimately for how long? This is I don't know if it will be a civil war. There has to be a revolution of sorts for either on either side, either with the government or with the Taliban, and that is just how it is. You can't force a person to think a certain way. Like a lot of people are also unhappy with the way several of their states are functioning or the way the things are. Like even in the US now, with Trump coming in, it's far more Republican. It's far like the white supremacy is gone so blatantly open.
So what
And
you're, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
please,
what
yeah,
you're trying to say is that in this particular process, the wishes and concerns of Afghans in a larger context are not being represented truly. What is
yeah,
happening is there is a political establishment, that is the Afghan government. There is another entity, that's the Taliban. They too are negotiating, and not necessarily it means that they both completely or together are representing the interest of Afghans in general.
yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Because if you see, uh, for there is obviously when the foreign now let me also again repeat the thing that I was saying about the foreign troops being on Afghan land and trying to broker peace and trying to make sure that the thing doesn't go out of order, because they can't drive the Taliban out. It's impossible for them to finish the Taliban or remove them whatever way they function. And we obviously don't know a lot about it. You might know a little more than I do because I've not been reading too much into the about how the Taliban functions, if the people are with them, if the people are against them. I don't know what kind of popularity they have within the country. But I will say this, that it needs to be a people's movement, like the Arab Spring was in many of the Middle Eastern and Arabic states where there was a monarchy or a dictatorship of sorts. I
It
think
was a
that
people's
needs to,
movement. Correct.
yeah. So I think that needs to happen in Afghanistan as well, because the foreign troops are also going to look at their political gains, their foreign policy gains, right? And they are
Hmm.
not going to kind of, they will, and they'll push that kind of narrative. So I
Correct.
feel no outside interference should be there. It should be a local thing. It should be a domestic issue. It should be a domestic solution. And I think dialogue is a great thing. If the elected government and the Taliban are having a conversation and they can find a way of coexisting, or if Taliban can become political and fight elections and win on popularity, I think that would
Hmm.
be great. And then if they go against the people's, what the people, the popularity or the majority of the people want, then there can be outside intervention just to calm things down, not to kill them or not to do something bad, not to create like a like a big like violence which currently is widespread across Afghanistan. And
Hmm.
a lot of people are dying, a lot of innocent people are dying. There's been persecution of minorities, and I mean there's so many
Correct.
factors that come in, and I think they also need to make sure that the ISI don't interfere so much,
Hmm.
because
Correct.
it's just, I mean, that's going to create a issue, right? When you try to, when you put religion into these issues, when you make it religious, when religion has nothing to do with this, when
Hmm.
religion
Correct.
has nothing to do with the governance or the government of the state, why do you bring
Hmm.
that in? Why do you kind of spoil it? Why do you make it so complicated? Because then who can speak against religion?
Correct.
So that's my view on it.
Okay. So, as I said, I would mention let's
You
see.
will you repeat that? As I said, after as I said. Hello, wait.
Huh?
Yeah,
Huh?
repeat after you said as I said.
Yeah, as I said, I'll give you the opinion of Khalilzad on this. So Khalilzad mentioned that 20 years we tried to kind of work something out that the war ends there, and because there was a civil war that was taking place at the time of U.S. intervention in Afghanistan. And what he said was, at this particular point of time, we brought the two parties together in one area, or rather to the table. So one interesting thing the anchor pointed out was, even though it's a Afghan-led process, both parties are Afghans. There's no outside interference as such. It's a direct talks between the two parties. He said the question is the timeline, because what's happening is the US is pushing for it to at its own timeline. That's 14 months, whereas the Taliban are gaining a undue leverage over the Afghan government because of this, because they know that US wants to leave Afghanistan and they want to do it in a particular time frame. So the Taliban have to just survive till then, and they are getting better terms, and the whole thing where they demanded the release of 500 prisoners. Still 4,600, there was no issue, but the last 400 prisoners that were left to be released, there was a lot of uh, haggling of sorts between Taliban and Afghanistan. There was a lot of violence that happened during that particular time,
Hmm.
and the reason the Afghan government didn't want to release those 500, because 400 remaining 400 people, was because they are very dangerous criminals, or very they've been involved with high profile attacks who have
Hmm.
caused rather cost a lot of lives. So what the anchor pointed out was interesting, that even though the US is not involved, nobody is involved. The timeline is not decided by Afghans. The timeline has been decided by someone else. That you have so much time, figure something out. Otherwise, you're on your own of sorts. So I think, like you said, hopefully, Afghanistan will return to peace, and the aspirations and the concerns of Afghans will be taken care of with this
Hmm.
particular negotiation that's taking place. And I think it's a good it's a good point to end a discussion on that right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. So on that note, we'll this is the end of
Yes.
100% sale of journalism ethics here. The fourth
Yeah.
episode. This is the fourth episode, and for all the first-time listeners, if you all are wondering why the name is 100% sale of journalism ethics here, well, Shailesh, would you like to tell them?
Hmm. It's a clickbait.
Yes, it's a clickbait, so
we
don't expect us
we
to. Yeah.
we don't want to. We are not selling any journal. Neither is anyone buying. That's another thing.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the economy is gone down to the dogs. Like, I don't think people can afford it also. And it's not an essential service.
Hmm.
It is a luxury.
Correct.
So I hope you all enjoyed this. This was the fourth episode. On that note, we are signing off. That's from me, Kaushal Bhatia, and
Sailesh, thank you all for those who would listen to this.
okay, bye.
Bye.